Welcome to the Next Gen Podcast. Stepping up to the microphone are your hosts, Bryson Wright and Alex Winton. They got next, so let's get to the show.
What is up, everybody? Welcome into the Next Gen Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Bryson Wright, and I'm joined by my co-host, Alex Winton. And we got a lot of stuff to get to over this last week. New signings for the Grizzlies, a press conference with GM Zach Kleiman, the last couple games for the Grizzlies as well. But I wanted to start with the last game. As we're recording this, the Grizzlies do have one more game coming up tonight against the Bucks. Not sure exactly who's going to be playing in that, but they finally broke that 9-game losing streak and were able to beat the Rockets and finally beat Dillon Brooks. I'm just going to say it. I'm glad they finally did it, because if they didn't do it, we were going to hear about it for the rest of eternity. So glad they finally did it. They beat Dillon Brooks. They beat the Rockets. It was a good game all around. Another really great game from G.G. Jackson, who, after last episode, we said, hey, we think he's probably going to get signed pretty soon. And then literally before we could even release it, he had a 27-point game, and he immediately got signed that night. And these last 5 games from GG have been awesome, averaging 19 points, averaging 7 rebounds, and then basically a steal and a block per game. So that's really good numbers. And I'm the type of person that at this point, I think if G.G. Jackson had been playing the whole season, he'd probably be first team all rookie, just because of the numbers he's putting up now. And not to say that there haven't been other good rookies around the NBA and stuff like that, but when you look at the way that he's basically been the sixth man for this team for a good amount, and in that role, he's been averaging almost 20 a game. It's like, you just got to think, like, what could he look like when he's been in this role for a whole season? If he had started with the Grizzlies in October, what would his numbers be? Obviously, at the time, there weren't as many injuries and stuff like that, so he probably wouldn't have got that opportunity. But it's just something where it's like, hey, I think if he had played from the beginning of the season, I think he'd be an all-rookie. But definitely had a great game for him against the Rockets. Even got a block on Dillon. 3 blocks in that game was really exciting. I thought Jaren had a slow start, but he closed really well. Really good fourth quarter from him. Hit that clutch three to end the game as well. And then also Vince, man. I keep talking about Vince Williams because the way that, like I said, you look at Dillon Brooks on the other side in that Rockets game, and you know that that's who the Grizzlies have been looking for, somebody to basically replace him. And then that whole inbound thing where Vince kicked the ball and then stole it from Dillon, it kind of felt like that was almost like, yeah, he's telling him I got this now. Like, have fun in Houston. We got this on lock. That's honestly what it felt like to me. But and then for me, seeing Vince and Gigi basically outplay Dillon was just more confirmation to me that I still don't think, even though Dillon has had his moments in Houston, I still don't think the Grizzlies were wrong to move on from him, because you see the way Vince and Gigi have played, and now you have both of them under contract for the next 4 years for less than what Dillon Brooks is going to be making this upcoming season. So I would take that any day of the week, especially since I think they're going to get better. And I think Vince does a lot of the stuff Dillon did, but he's more efficient and he's a better passer. So I'm fine with that. And then I think Gigi has a chance to be a core piece. I think in 2-3 years, we will be talking about Gigi the same way that we talk about Ja, Jaren, and Bane in terms of the cornerstone of the team. He has that level of potential. So to have both of those guys locked in now for the next 4 years, it's just great work from the Grizzlies front office. And I'm really excited to see what they do over the terms of this contract for sure.
Yeah, it's funny how that stuff works out. We always release, or when we release on basically a Friday, and we recorded Thursday. Something happens like right after this, like the second time, because I think it happened with Vince's contract too, where we recorded, and then right after that same day, Vince get a contract. I'm like, dude, it's just so funny how that stuff works out. But yeah, nah, I mean, we everybody kind of knew it was gonna happen with GG getting the contract. Um, just kind of like a matter of more of like if not when. It's just funny how the timing worked out. Especially considering um, just like how the deadline was working because they had to cut somebody just to have make it happen and stuff like that. But it's just funny how it broke. But I mean, everybody was happy about it, obviously. Just because, and then you had to wait for the details of how much money it is, and then once you realize that you're basically getting GG and Vince on pennies for the dollar type thing, like you understand like, hey, that's really good value. Obviously he should. I mean, he was a first round talent, so obviously he's not getting paid the same that he should be really getting paid. But I mean, we've done this before. Like, no, obviously Bane was a first round talent, but like we didn't pay Bane like lottery money, even though he, and Bane would go in a lottery or in a redraft would go lottery. So getting value for basically guys are gonna play over their contract. But yeah, no, I mean, especially with GG these last 5 games, obviously he's been more consistent regardless of whether he's been starting or kind of just been coming off the bench. I think a lot of most all 5 been off the bench. I think he might have started maybe 1 or 2 of those games. But I mean, and then after this last game, remember he got suspended the game beforehand. I think it was the Pelicans. He didn't get to play. So for him to come out and then still be locked in on what he need to be focused on and uh really just continue to do what he's been showing. Obviously scoring from multiple levels. I mean, really all starts with the 3 ball. Again, he's got to be a catch and shoot guy, or else no, I'm not gonna say none of this works, but his value on his team decreases because that's where he's gonna make his bread and butter for the most part. Because I do understand what you're saying, because I do that's the hope, right? That he becomes a core piece. But as we've seen with one of our core pieces, that's not how you start out as. Bane was a catch and shoot guy to start out his first year. In the second year, he got more on ball reps, and then his third year, boom, he became more of a guy that you could put him on the ball. I expect that same type of thing with GG. They're gonna make sure they're gonna give him little stuff, and then he shows that he can do it. Then they'll give him more freedom to do the stuff that we've seen in college or we saw in high school, and I mean even we've seen in the league, but in lower usage situations. So yeah, no, GG needs to continue to play well, focus on just hooping. Again, I think Jaren said it came out because people were talking about the suspension because it came out of nowhere. And Jaren was just like he said, like he's gonna be one of the best players in the league. He gotta act like it. And so while again, we don't know what he's gonna be, I'm confident that he'll be somewhere on this team, a big part of his team down the road. So he just gotta continue to keep focusing on, the main thing and grow up. Like again, I'm not saying that in a bad way, grow up. Like he's only 19. Like I think he'll I don't think it's that big of a deal. I think a lot of the stuff, even we don't know the details, it's really not that bad. It's just a lot of stuff that he has to learn as a professional athlete that he can't do, certain things he can and can't do. But as for Vince, really in that Rockets game, it was kind of just funny. Just him going against Dillon, because like you said, like that's the dude we were trying to replace. And like you said, more so to your point, he is a better passer, but I think he's more of a willing passer. He's not going to have more hero ball moments. Now, I will say Vince had some moments like that in the past week, but considering the context, it's necessary because literally outside of Jaren, maybe GG, maybe Vince, who else is going to score or be a threat on the ball? You know what I mean? Like, so there's not really a lot of guys that are creators out there. So they're putting Vince in a creator role, which I think is helping his playmaking, is allowing him to be able to try different passes and be okay with it. And, there's certain results where it'll be a great pass and some be turnovers. That's going to be part of it. And he's still doing all the little stuff to impact the game. So, yeah, I mean, both of those guys in theory, I think will be core pieces. Obviously, you don't know what the future holds, but for getting them at the money that you got them at, especially considering the new rules are not crazy, but you do have to watch the first apron, the second apron, and all of that. Adding value around the margins is going to be big time, and adding value like this, especially when it's core pieces, young pieces too, is always going to help. So now the moves that you do going into the summer, you can basically say like, hey, we can maybe go, I won't say go all in on somebody, but you can go all in more so and use your money differently now, where you can get like maybe 2 core pieces, knowing you already got 2 more rotation guys, possibly potentially going into next year. So, it's good to have those 2 guys. Obviously they've really changed how we look at the wing position on this team, because if you look at the wing position or compared to when we were talking about it right before the season's now, it's like night and day. So yeah, shout out to them. Because again, they could end up changing the trajectory of this team. But again, like I said it last week, I'm gonna say it all the time. More work to be done. More work to be done. So yeah.
Definitely more work to be done. Talking about like Gigi missing that one game and being suspended, they never exactly said what it was. They said a violation of team rules. I mean, maybe he overslept practice or something. I don't
Yeah,
know.
like being late,
I
you know
don't
what I
think
mean?
I
Something
don't think
like
it
that.
was anything too crazy. Like obviously he only missed one game and then he came back and had a good game. But they talked about it in post game and he kind of said that same thing. It's about him kind of learning how to be a professional, really. Because I mean, like we said, he's 19 years old, so there's a lot of stuff that he has to learn about being a professional. And then just like obviously, I know he went to college for a year, but he's still only a couple years removed from like probably his parents waking him up for school and stuff. You know what I mean? Like it's that's what I mean was like this dude is really young, so he still has like a lot of stuff that he still has to learn. So I don't see that as like something I think is going to be a long term issue, and I think that the Grizzlies have also been saying that he's kind of reacted well to their constructive criticism and he's tried to be better and everything like that. So I wouldn't be too worried about that or anything. I don't think it's going to be something that's going to continue to happen or he's going to miss more games down the line. But yeah, no. So, but this last stretch from Gigi, like I said, he looks like a true NBA caliber, starting caliber player. And I think you see that with Vince and Gigi. And when you talk about like the wing position and the way you see the wing position completely changing, like coming into the season, we didn't know who was really like Zaire and Roddy and Laravia and all those guys. Didn't know what you were really going to get out of them. And then it's like going to next year, even though you probably will still have Zaire and Jake most likely, unless they move on or something happens this offseason, or at least probably still have Zaire for that last year, I'd say. But you now have them as instead of coming into the season being like, oh, this guy either has to start or be in the rotation. He's now like, he might be a guy that comes in if people get hurt or something like that. And I think it just shores up the rotation a little bit. I do agree with you though that I think, there's still work that can be done. And I think when Zach Kleiman had that press conference, he kind of explained that as well. That a lot of the stuff they did at this trade deadline, kind of like we said on the last episode, a lot of stuff that he did this trade deadline was setting up for them to kind of make a bigger, maybe a splashy move this offseason. And basically saying that all things are on the table when it comes to the young players and how they've played. Talked about how, like I said, Zaire and Jacob both had flashes, but obviously they're not untouchable. So like I don't know if I necessarily say they're definitely going to be gone because I don't really know, but I think they are more open to that idea now because they've added Vince and Gigi as well in those positions. So it's kind of like if you do move on from like before the season, you move on from one of those guys, you're like, we don't even know who's going to be playing there. But now you know at least two guys that can replace those guys if they do end up moving on from them. So I could see it going either way. But I think just having those guys and knowing that they are going to be your core and Gigi could be an actual like 6 man of the year candidate next year, right? If he stays in this role, because I mean, look, maybe not, but like that, I see that like microwave scorer kind of archetype in him as something the Grizzlies have really needed for the last couple years, and I could see him being like in that conversation. Maybe not next year, but over the next few years, if he continues to come off the bench, and then maybe eventually like taking over that starting role as well.
Yeah, I mean that is the hope. I mean, I think he even touched on it last night, talking about like, if he liked the role that he's in. He doesn't obviously say he didn't care what role he was in, but he felt like he's getting a rhythm in his role coming off the bench and beginning to score. But he's like he feels like if this keeps going the way it does, yeah, he probably see, that he could be one of the future pieces or like the future of that wing position. But I mean, again, that's the hope. Again, I'm a big person. Like, yeah, I don't know. I guess I am. Obviously, clearly, I am excited. But again, some people are, oh man, he's gonna be, and I hope so. But it's the same thing with Jaren. I gotta see it because it's the same thing. Like, I like what I'm seeing, but you always just gotta hope that these things happen because again, because things can change fast. Because like you even said, with Zaire and Jake, Zaire was the 10th pick, Jake was the first rounder. Those guys had an ample amount of opportunity to take advantage of what they had in front of them. You shoot even David Roddy, and now you're talking about one's off the roster, and then the other two, one Jake can't stay on the floor his first 2 years in terms of being healthy and available. Then Zaire's been so up and down, and now their team. I'm not saying their tenure is going to be over, but it's more likely that it is than that their tenure here is going to be shorter than the other two. You know what I mean? And with Vince, he was a second round guy, didn't have a contract. Like things change fast in this league, so you just never know. So, but it is good to see that you do might have a guy that could eventually be a starting wing for you. Because again, that's been a part or a big weakness of this team is really, in my opinion, like I said, they've needed two starters for a while. Not really a while, but more so two replacements at the starters. Because obviously you got three in Jaja and the Bane. And so you really need to, and they still need one, obviously, in the center spot. That's, a given looking at the roster and all that. But the wing, obviously you still will need a starter, but you might still have a future starter in G. Who knows? If he continues to keep doing what he's doing, I mean, I think that's the conversation. That's what you hope. You hope it's the same type of Bane trajectory, maybe even faster, depending. Because again, with Bane, obviously he was I'm gonna say less talented, but just he's not 6'9" and athletic. Like Bane obviously had to work, and Gigi had to work too. But just there's more skill and talent that's God given to Gigi than is to Bane in terms of his build and what he can do at his size. So you just hope that he can stay on this path. That's really what I'm hoping. So just stay on this path, keep doing what you're doing, and it'll work out how it's supposed to work out. He keeps doing what he does, which is my biggest thing, is binding to your role, impacting the game without having to score. Because once you do become what you do become, in terms of what we've seen, in terms of a scorer, play finisher, whatever you want to call it, or creator as a wing, you doing all the little stuff too. That's going to make you a star. That's what makes stars. You do the things that are impressive, but you do the stuff that impacts winning. That's what real stars do. That's what they all do. So that's why I'm just, him being a quote unquote role player now will help when he becomes that, if he does. So yeah, I'm definitely high on Gigi. These are good reps for him, regardless. Like they play tonight. Listen, you probably know Jaren playing tonight. He doubtful. I think Rose. So like he probably gonna start or he gonna play like 30-something minutes. Regardless of how he plays. He can go over 12 or he can go 8 for 12. I don't care. Either way, just getting those reps, game reps against especially a team like the Bucks is gonna help. Like, because I'm pretty sure Giannis and Dame are gonna play. Like him just getting these reps and be able to play against these people is gonna help and benefit him going forward. So yeah.
Yeah, no question about that. And then continuing to talk about like how not only those two have kind of changed what you might think for next season, some of the new guys that they've brought in. I mean, I really like what Lamar Stevens has done in his. I know he's only played 2 games, but he scored in double figures in both games. Been a good defender, and he's one of those guys that to me, like when I've been watching him, it just seems like the ball always finds him, especially like on defense. Like he's always in the right place. He's always contesting the shot. He's always getting deflections. Like even if it doesn't necessarily turn into a turnover, he's just constantly in the right position and making plays on defense. And then offensively, I mean, he's been efficient. Like I said, 14 points and 10 points in his first 2 games as a Grizzly. So I was really happy to see that. Because I mean, I know we talked about it last week. We didn't even know if he was actually going to be on the team, if he was going to end up being cut. They ended up cutting Metu instead of him, which through 2 games, I mean, I see why they made that decision. I mean, Lamar Stevens has played great. Even had a nice dunk on Alperen Sengun in that Rockets game that was cool. I enjoyed that. So, but he does all the little things that make you really excited just to watch basketball. Like he's always gonna hustle. He's always gonna get deflections. He's gonna dive for loose balls and everything like that. And I think that's why a lot of people, even though he's only played a couple games, have been saying like, "Hey, I would not be mad if they ended up bringing him back next year." And I think that he is playing like obviously he's playing for his next contract because he wasn't really playing on the Celtics. He's trying to showcase his skills and everything, not only for the Grizzlies, maybe for another team as well. But I think if he can play at this level, it would make the Grizzlies kind of rethink of okay, maybe when you first trade for him, you think okay, he's going to play till the end of this season, and then we'll move on in the off season. But if he's not going to be very expensive and you don't have a lot of other options, I think that's a fine option as another kind of depth piece when it comes to wing. Because I mean, I think he has nice size. He's like I said, he's good on defense. Obviously, not as much of an offensive player, but he's not going to shoot you out of the game either. Right? He knows his role. He's going to come in and play his role, and I think that's another reason why a lot of people have been talking about the Grizzlies getting more veteran guys and older guys, because that's what you get out of those guys, is that every night you're going to get consistent defense, and he's not going to shoot you out of the game. And like sometimes that's all you need in like a veteran guy that's coming off the bench. So I really enjoyed watching him. And then I also liked Jordan Goodwin in his first game and everything. I thought he played pretty well in his first game back, or his first game as a Grizzly as well. Not sure exactly what they'll do with him, because I know that he's not signed for like the entire rest of the season or anything like that, but still in that kind of like hardship contract role. But I mean, if he plays well, I'm sure that he'll probably get another one, and we might see a little bit more of him going forward. But yeah, I like that they're like trying out a lot of different people, a lot of different lineups, and kind of evaluating, because it kind of gives you a chance to see who do you want next year, who do you not want next year. So I think we're gonna see a lot of this kind of stuff where, you know, maybe Jordan Goodwin and Lamar Stevens play a lot one night, and then the next night it's more Zaire and Trey Jemison and guys like that. Like I think we'll see some back and forth when it comes to that kind of stuff, because they want to evaluate all these guys as much as possible.
Well, yeah, I mean, we are back in what I don't know if people remember what when the Grizzlies were like early rebuild, they were like data collecting, like that was the whole big phrase, key phrase. That's basically what they're doing now. Like that's a lot of it, like you said. So they're definitely going to try a lot of different things, and I mean, they really have no choice. Again, this team is still plagued by a lot of injuries. Like I mean, you're still missing like half your rotation, missing two All-Star level players. Like it's just basically three starters if you count Smart. Like so, you're missing a lot still. Even though they traded some of the people that like Adams, and obviously traded Tillman and all that, but still, you know, there's a lot of opportunity. Like I said, there's been opportunity all the season, and again, either some people have taken advantage of it and some people have not. Obviously, we've seen guys get contracts that taking advantage of it, and obviously we've seen the people that haven't taken advantage of it. They still have time to take advantage, but obviously it's a smaller window, a smaller sample size because of the stuff that's happened already over the course of the season. Um, but yeah, I mean, with Stevens, I mean, again, he's obviously an expiring. So like again, like he's trying to get another contract, so he might be playing better than that. But then again, when I remember watching him, I mean, I didn't watch it, like I wasn't watching those games for Lamar Stevens. Obviously, I'm an NBA fan, but I was watching those games and I see him play. He was never like a bad player. Like it seemed like he, like you said, did the little things, hustled. He's not a really great shooter, but he is, I think, like 6'6". So he's more probably like a three, more small ball four, which is fine. I remember a tweet I saw yesterday. Well, I can't remember the count right now. But if you're watching, the shout out to you. They said something like it was like Lamar Stevens is playing like what we wanted Roddy to play like, essentially. And I thought that was pretty funny, but it was kind of accurate just because, I always view Roddy as a combo forward. Like, guy that could be a 3-4. Obviously, I want him to shoot better, but a guy that, could basically be like a PJ Tucker type. And while I'm not saying Lamar is like, as good as PJ, because PJ can shoot the ball, but he does those things, like the little stuff, rebounding, guard multiple positions, shoot. Like you said, he's out there guarding Sengun a couple times, cutting off his water. Like he's actually playing like that. And so for me, if he does that, I mean, he continues to do that, like little stuff like that, I wouldn't mind him back on the roster because he's going to be cheap. Like it's not like he's asking for like 10, $15 million a year. Like he might be on Rose money, right? And Rose, in theory, is supposed to be the 15th guy, 15th, 14th guy. Like I'm cool with having guys that are in the back end of your rotation. My biggest thing is just you just need to have a clear 1 through 8 to 10, maybe 11. You need to have a clear 11 guys, and then after that, you're 12 to 15. Like okay, when you have injuries in that 1 through 11 or 1 through 10, hey, they can come in, plug play right away type thing. And you don't have to really have too much of a drop off like we've seen in the past with other guys. Like when we still have Conchar, but when Conchar used to step in, or like, I want to say Melton, he didn't really step in, but like, when we had like Killian Tilly, like those type of guys back then when they would step in and play and there was really no drop off. So Yeah, I mean, I can see him definitely getting another contract. Obviously, I won't say this complicates things, but obviously Yuta, he did play. I forgot what game he did play, but I think he only played one game. He has a player option, which is only like 2.6 million for next year. So I mean, that's not going to factor too much in. But again, that is another roster spot. I would be sure he probably takes it. I mean, if not, then they'll figure it out, whatever. But even then, these guys are on cheap money. So a lot of this, if these guys play well, you get to keep them on cheap money. If they're not, then that's just another roster spot. So it's a win-win situation in terms of those lower level guys. And again, they're going, like I said, guys are gonna miss games because again, even if let's say certain guys come back, like a Bang comes back, a Smart comes back, they're not gonna play every game, especially because they're gonna be back to backs, or there's gonna be like 3 games in 4 nights, so they're not gonna play every game. They're just not going to do that. Like Jaren, we're seeing that with now Jaren. Like I'm pretty sure Jaren's quad is not that hurt, quote unquote, like he's just resting, but they can't say, oh, he's a rest day. Like it's clear, like it's clearly it's a back to back. I don't think Jaren's hurt. He's just okay. We're gonna rest him, which is cool. Like that's fine. Like, this season, you don't have to play every game. They're gonna play most of the games. They're not gonna just tank. You don't do that. But when you get a little rest day here and there, they're gonna do that, and that's where you get more opportunity. So I wouldn't be surprised if Lamar played well again because in the first 2 games he played well. I mean, I think if I'm looking at it, yeah, first game against Pelicans had 10 points, 7 rebounds, 2 blocks. Last game he had 14 points, 8 rebounds, 2 blocks. Like could see, I'm expecting him to continue to play well, especially knowing he's going to have the opportunity to play. I think um, I think Vince might have talked about it a while ago, but it's like now, like it's easier to play more freer when you can play through your mistakes and not really, you have all the freedom and opportunity to do that because of the situation that's in hand. So, I expect him to continue to play well. Obviously, shout out to Goodwin. He did play well too. Him is more tricky because it's a 10-day, but even then, you're just glad that these guys playing well and knowing their roles. That's a big thing. And so for me, if they can continue to do that, they have a chance to have an opportunity to stay on this roster past this year. I mean, that's the big thing. And for low money, which is the biggest thing for the Grizzlies in the sense. Obviously, I want everybody to get paid, but in terms of for the Grizzlies, they want to find things around the margins as much as they can because they're going to be a high paying team off the rip when you're paying Ja, Jaren, and Bane max level money. Well, not Bane or not Jaren yet, but you get what I'm saying. You got guys paying you 30, 40 mil. That's just you're going to be an expensive team. And then that's not to mention the other guys that you're probably going to add in this trade, in the offseason that are making maybe 12 to $15 million per year. You know what I mean? So by the end of you look up, you might be in the first apron. You might be in the second apron.
Yeah.
Either way, you're gonna pay there's gonna be a lot of stuff going on. So, getting lower guys on value, lower money is big time.
Well, yeah, and then it also when you get into all that tax stuff in terms of first apron, second apron, it makes it. And Zach Kleiman talked about it in his post game press, or not post game, but his post trade deadline press conference too. That they're not worried about the money necessarily and like the luxury tax itself, but more the fact that you lose the MLE and it makes it and you can't trades get more difficult when you hit that second apron. It's
Yeah.
like the money has to match even closer than it does now. So I think those other kinds of restrictions are what they're more worried about than necessarily like I think Robert Pera, if it was just the luxury tax, I think, okay, they'll pay it. But I think they're trying to avoid those other restrictions, which I think is one of the reasons why the NBA added those restrictions so that teams are like, okay, we'll just pay that extra money and sign everybody, right? So teams don't necessarily want to do that anymore because not only do you have to pay that luxury tax for your owner, but as a GM, it makes your job more difficult. So I think if they avoid that first, second apron, as of now, it looks like they're going to avoid it, and they can find some of these guys. Like they've already got Vince and Gigi locked up on really high value contracts, but they can continue to find guys like a Lamar Stevens or a Yuta that's only going to be making a couple $1 million next year. I think that is going to help them tremendously because we know that Bane's contract is kicking in. We know that luckily Jaren is actually on a declining one, so it's going to get a little bit easier on that front, which is still insane, right? If it wasn't for the contract they just signed with Vince and Gigi, I still think Jaren would have the best contract in the NBA. But yeah, I think that the way that they've kind of set themselves up, they've set themselves up pretty well. As in, you're going to have Ja, Jaren, Bane, and now Vincent Gigi for the next 3-4 years, right? You've got those guys locked in. Brandon Clark, you had an extension on him already that's going to be kicking in. So when he comes back, you know you're going to have him. You got Luke Kennard, who is going to have an option, so we'll see what happens. But you control what you want to do with him. And then, Santi's still on a rookie deal, Zaire still on a rookie deal, stuff like that. So you have a lot of players that are going to be locked up these next couple seasons, where you don't necessarily have to go out and sign a bunch of free agents and stuff like that, but you also still have the flexibility in those other spots and the cap space if you did want to go out and try to make a big splash or make a big trade and everything like that. So I think overall they're in a solid position, and like I said last week, we're going to see what they do once they get to the offseason. But the move they made to go ahead and lock up G.G. Jackson, getting Lamar Stevens back in that Xavier Tillman trade, it looks like it was a good decision. So as we continue to look at this, and then we'll see what they do with those second round picks that they got. So it's like when you look at all this stuff, it's starting to come together a little bit, and I think each week we'll see it come together a little bit more to kind of see what the master plan kind of is. But I think that the ability for them to kind of take a step back this year, evaluate what they have, and then figure out what they want to add to the guys that are out this year for next season, I think it might have actually helped them more than like as much as it sounds weird to say. Obviously, you never want guys to get hurt and everything. But I think looking back, it might be like it was like a blessing in disguise for the team in general because they're able to find these guys, and then even if you hadn't found those guys this year, who knows if those guys are healthy, if you win, if you don't, whatever. But it's like, let's say they had done that and they were close and lost. Maybe you don't make as drastic of changes as you do now. And maybe those drastic changes put you in a better position to actually win it all. So it's one of those things where it's looking like the injuries and all this stuff really could be a blessing in disguise just for the team in general and for the ultimate goal, which is to win a championship in Memphis.
Yeah. To clarify what you were talking about with the tax, they're going to have to, like I'm big on this. They're going to have to pay. They're going to have to be one of the top payroll teams if they're going to really win. That's usually how it is. Historically, majority of the time, if you at the bottom, because the Grizzlies have been a bottom 5 payroll team the last 2 years, you're really not going to win a championship like that. Usually, most teams don't win if you're like bottom 5. You're usually top 15 at worst. At worst, maybe top 20. So they're going to have to pay. That's just part of it. Like I think even Kleiman said it. You're going to have to pay money just to win. Like if the owner's not going to pay, it's not gonna matter. But what I'm saying is they can add talent, at lower value, because if they add talent at lower value and then they have to become a second apron team, it doesn't hurt them as much because of the people they added at that lower value, if that makes sense. Like Boston's not really worried about the second apron because they got basically 6 to 7, 8 guys that are NBA players and like a lot of all-stars on the team. They don't care about that. You know what I mean? If your roster's built the right way as a real contender, it won't matter. So that's more so what I wanted to say. But as for them and them with a bigger picture, I think it is interesting how it's gonna work out, obviously. Just cause um you just it's gonna be, because people questioned it and obviously with all the moves and stuff like that, they thought the Grizzlies are gonna do more. But honestly, again, it's all about the setup. And again, like consider how the seasons went. I've always been a big proponent of like everything happens for a reason. Like we've seen it before. Like with Jaren getting hurt, I think what was it the first year he was in Memphis when they ended up getting first year in Memphis, his quad injury after they traded Mark, and then they had like it was like Mike and like Joakim Noah and Avery Bradley and all them. They didn't try to tank, they just tried to go out there and play, and it ended up working in their favor because they didn't tank, and obviously because I'm a big proponent of the lottery rig. Silver saw that as like, hey, we gonna hook you up. And then the year after, I think that was the bubble. Not really year after, but year after that, Jaren got hurt, and obviously they still made the playoffs and stuff like that. But I mean, again, it worked out how it's supposed to because guys got more opportunity. I think Bane got a little bit. I won't say Bane. I won't say it helped Bane, but I mean Bane became like more of a main rotation player because somebody had to make up the minutes and the points and all that. Same with the year after that. I'm pretty sure I think DB was hurt for most of that year. Bane emerged even more. And obviously then you had the trade. So like a lot of this stuff happens for a reason. Guys have injuries. I mean, it happened last year and even this year. Last year with getting suspended and hurt. Um, well, not hurt, but getting suspended. It allowed Jaren at the end of the year to be more of an on-ball scorer. And then obviously this year with Bane, it made him become even a better guy. And now even Jaren, like it's helping them grow. Like all these injuries happen, I'm gonna say happen for a reason. Like you don't want them to happen, like you said. But a lot of stuff, is part of the plan, it's part of the process. Like it's gonna work out how it's supposed to work out. You know what I mean? Like we hate that Adams got hurt, but in the future, depending on what they do and how, this next year is gonna work out how it's supposed to work out, and hopefully for the better. So you just gotta trust that. Because again, you know, depends on what you believe in and all that. But it's like for me, it's like, I think a lot of this stuff is gonna work out in their fortune just because they're doing it the right way. As long as you're going about it the right way and the process is right, you're gonna be fine. So that's why I'm a big proponent of not saying you don't, obviously they're gonna have rest days, but you don't full on sit everybody. Like if Bane and Smart can come back, they should be able to come back, and play some games, even if you're not gonna make the playoffs, because it's gonna benefit not only their fortunes, just with the quote unquote basketball guys, but more so just because there's more reasons to play. We've seen Gigi play with Bane, or we've seen Gigi play with Jaren, but we haven't seen him play really with Bane or Smart. And if he's going to be a main rotation piece, he's going to play with better players even more. So you would like to see him with those type of guys because his role might change a little bit different. He might have to adjust a little bit more. I mean, we've seen Vince with everybody, but I mean, even then, you would like to see him. You would like to see this version because you'd like to see this version of Vince now with the guys that are injured, because that version of Vince when in like December when Ja came back, it's not the same Vince now. He's more of a catch and shoot guy, and he still is a catch and shoot guy. But now Vince is a little bit better, probably more of a playmaker. Maybe a little bit more of a creator, can put the ball on the floor. You would like to see that with those guys. You know what I mean? Because again, if these guys are supposed to be main rotation players, you want to see them with the star guys or the core guys. So, or the bigger core guys. So that's why I think there's more benefit in the guys playing, and you go around about the process the right way. So yeah, I do think, all this is going to work out how it's supposed to work out. But again, the work has to be done. So, and I know I sound like I almost say pessimistic, but again, just a lot more stuff needs to be done. But I am confident that it will get done. It's just more of a wait and see type of thing.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that part. And then just before we end this, talking about more opportunity and everything like that, it also opened the ability for a guy like Vince Williams Jr. to be the only Grizzly at All Star Weekend this year. So shout out Vince Williams Jr. He's going to be in the Rising Stars game. Definitely think he deserves it after the way that he's been playing this year. So I'm going to be excited to see. I know the Rising Stars is a little bit different now. They're going to have multiple teams, and it's kind of more of like a tournament type of thing. So hopefully his team will do well and he'll get some good playing time. But yeah, he was an injury replacement for Dyson Daniels. So he's kind of going to have 3 games in a row because they're going to have this back to back where they just played against the Rockets. They're going to be playing the Bucks, and then he's going to be playing on Friday. Going to be playing the Rising Stars game. But obviously, it's kind of more like an all-star game. But so not as much defense, not as strenuous stuff like that. But knowing him, I'm sure that he's going to play it the same way. He's one of those dudes. I feel like he's going to be trying to play defense in the all-star game and all that kind of stuff. So I'm excited about that. And I just hope he plays well. But I'm excited that he's getting that opportunity, and excited that the Grizzlies will have something to look forward to going into All-Star Weekend. Obviously, a lot of non-Grizzly stuff to look forward to. The thing I'm most looking forward to, honestly, is the Steph and Sabrina three-point showdown. I'm probably more excited about that than anything else. But I'm also glad that the Grizzlies will have some kind of representation there, because we know I don't think Bane's doing the three-point contest or anything, obviously, because he's hurt. I think maybe he would have thought about it if he was healthy, but he's not doing it. And then I feel like anybody else that would compete in anything was injured, right? Ja didn't play enough games and has been injured, so he couldn't make All Star. There might have been a question if Jaren could have made the All Star team, but it kind of not in the cards this year because I think the team has been so bad that he didn't get the same level of love that he got from the coaches that he did last season. So not surprised at that at all. And I'm actually glad that he's going to get a vacation instead of having to go out there anyway. So I think that is one positive. Obviously, I think Vince is still going to get some time off after he goes to the Rising Stars game, but it's just going to be good for the entire team to get some time off. This season has been a lot on everybody, so like obviously getting some time off, getting a break, and then come back refreshed for these last 30 games or so.
Yeah, and to clarify, I just want to say a little quick joke. Jaren was already playing like he's on vacation to that fourth quarter. So and he already started his vacation a little bit early tonight. He ain't gonna play today. He deserved it. Not saying he don't deserve it, but it was just funny because 3/4, I'm like, man, this man already playing like he's on vacation. But it is funny because again, like you said, everybody deserved a vacation. Because again, all the other stuff. But yeah, like Jaren, he could have made it, but like just the West is tough. Like I don't think people understand how deep the West is in terms of talent. Like, it's hard to make all-star teams. Like usually the all-star, like just all-star teams in general now, but especially in the West, like you really got to be like a superstar to make the all-star team in the West. Like basically, like Sabonis and Fox didn't even make this all-star team. Like one, and I'm not saying they playing at an all-star level, but I mean you look at the names, who they make it over. You know what I mean? It's just that tough. So especially, and they had the wins, so it's just tough to make it in the West. So, but it is good to see them have, like you said, like a break. As for Vince, yeah, it's funny how he's gonna play like 3 games or in 3 days. Like it's like AAU again, all over again for him probably. But I think his team is actually good. If I'm looking at it, yeah, his team is actually pretty good because I think it's like Paolo, Duran, Keontae George, Scoot, Ivy, Murray. Like that's a pretty nice team. And I'm a big fan of the Rising Star stuff, like especially the new format, how they do it. Like I think I'm a bigger fan of that than I was like the US versus the world, like in terms of Rising Stars. Like this is I think a better format for that. So
I definitely agree with that. I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, I like this format a lot more. So I'm definitely gonna be tapped in on that. And then like you said, the 3-point contest, that's probably where I'm at. Maybe the skill challenge depending, but that's really about it. Dunk contest, it is what it is at this point. You know what I mean? So like for me, it's more 3-point contest and the Rising Star stuff. Especially
Dude, the
because
dunk contest, I'm sorry, the dunk contest is a joke, man. Like the dunk contest has become a joke. We literally got dudes getting called up from the G League to do the dunk contest. Like, and that's no offense to Mac McClung either, because I mean he won it last year, but I'm like, dude, come
he
on.
cold. Yeah,
He's
he
cold.
cold.
And look, I've been watching Mac McClung dunk since I was probably about 15, 16 years old, I feel like.
Yeah, right.
Because he was viral on YouTube all the time. We all knew he could dunk. But it's like, dude, that's crazy. It's crazy. Just go thinking about when I was a kid and I was younger and everything, and like the Nate Robinson versus the Dwight Howard and Blake Griffin jumping over a car and all that. It was like the dunk contest was All-Star weekend. Like the dunk contest was more popular than the All-Star game, I feel like, when I was like, people are like, okay, the All-Star game, you watch the game, but like people got excited about the dunk contest. Now it's almost
Yeah,
like
at
the
certain points. Yeah, certain points.
yeah,
Yeah, certain
now it's
certain years.
almost like the 3-point contest and even the skills competition. It's like, man, I'd rather watch that. But hey, you know what? Maybe they can revive it this year. I do think Mac McClung did a great job last year, and since he spends most of the year focusing on the dunk contest, he should have some really, really good dunks. Because I mean that's like his thing. He is the dunk contest dude now. Like he is going to be on a contract every year, even if it's a G League contract, just so that they can call him up and he can do the dunk contest. So
That's the brand. Yeah, that's the brand.
that's his brand now. But I think out of all of it, I think I'm gonna be most excited for Rising Stars. Anytime you can see like Wimby and Chet play against each other and stuff like that. Like I'm here for that, man. So I hope that we get to see it. I hope that Vince's team plays well as well, like you said. Like you said, sounds like they got some good guys, but they got Paolo. Like I'm a big Paolo Banchero fan as well.
Yeah, and let me say this: some of these, I'm telling you, these other teams are pretty good too. Like I think Team Pal got Brandon Miller and Victor on the same team, and I think who
That's
else?
crazy.
Jabari Smith. Like then I think Team Jalen, because they drafted his teams. Obviously, they didn't get the injuries, didn't change some of that. But I think they got Chet and Kessler on the same team. Lively, like Jalen Williams. Like then I think the G League teams are all right. That's pretty easy. Like I like these teams. Like I liked the last year. So like, yeah, I'm definitely gonna be there. I'm watching. Like I'm gonna be watching this. Like because those matchups are gonna be good if those guys take it serious. I'm not saying they're gonna be like like it's gonna be like the All-Star game. Like there's gonna be some defense played, not really, but I want to see I want to see people compete. You know what I mean? And so hopefully that's what
Definitely.
I'm hoping for. And I do think Vince is gonna compete. I don't think Vince is gonna just sit there. Like I did think that's how he's wired. Like
that's what I said. Vince,
he's a psycho.
Yeah,
he's
gonna be playing defense.
Yeah, he's a psycho, bro. Like mind you, this is the same dude who he didn't have a contract yet, was talking crap to CJ McCollum in New Orleans when we was down that first game and Jaws returned. Like he hit that 3, pointing at him, start talking to him, and they end up winning that game. He's crazy. So he's going. I don't expect nothing else. I expect him to come in and play well. I don't know how well he's gonna play, but he's gonna compete. So yeah, I'm excited to see.
Yeah, I'm excited for that as well. But like I always say, I appreciate everybody who listened to this week's episode of the Next Gen Podcast here on the Bluff City Media Podcast Network. As always, I'm your host, Bryson Wright, and I was joined by my co-host, Alex Winton. And we will see y'all next week where we will keep giving y'all all the best Grizzlies news.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Next Gen Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, leave a like and a comment wherever you download your podcasts. Head over to www.bluffcitymedia.co, where you will find comprehensive coverage of all things Memphis sports and how you can become an insider. We'll see you back here next time.